My name is Marcia Lindseth, and I am co-chair of the Northwest Wisconsin Synod's Racial Justice Action Group. Because I am probably the oldest member of our group and have lived a long time as a person with white privilege, I was asked to share with you a few of my experiences which have motivated me to work for racial justice. I grew up in north central Montana in a town of about 60,000 people. I imagine it was like growing up in northwest Wisconsin, except that I could see high mountains beyond the plains and growing fields of wheat instead of corn. I learned to read in books that featured a family composed of a white father and mother, children named Dick, Jane, and Sally, a dog named Spot, and a kitten named Puff. There were absolutely no people of color in any of the classrooms in my elementary school, even though I found out later there was a large squatter community of Native Americans living just a few miles outside of my town. I have since wondered if those Indian children even went to school. I doubt it. My high school had almost 2,000 students in it, including perhaps about 10 Black students total. Those students were highly admired as athletes, class officers, and good musicians. They were our friends. Imagine my surprise when attending my 50th high school class reunion that one of those well-liked Black students wrote a letter to the editor of our hometown newspaper about what it was really like to grow up in our town. It was only then I learned that he had to live in a certain less desirable part of our town with other people of color, couldn't date any white girl in our school, couldn't be out at night for fear of encounters with the local police, and had to be careful at all times about where he went, with whom he was seen, and how he expressed himself. After high school, I attended one of our great church colleges, Gustavus Adolphus College in St. Peter, Minnesota. I was a sociology major and began to discover some of the realities of our broader society. It was in the 1960s, a real period of unrest in the United States. After 2 years at Gustavus, I married, and we moved to Germany, where my husband served in the United States Army. It was there that we encountered, among other officers, mainly from southern states, an unbridled prejudice towards Black people. Every argument we had with them ended with their saying to us, "You just don't understand. You're from the North and haven't lived with them." When we returned from Germany and entered civilian life, we took a trip to the southern states, where we saw evidence of strong prejudice against African Americans. Separate water fountains, hotels, toilets, parks, and even telephone booths. We saw dilapidated schools and housing for Black people, even though legally those things had been declared unconstitutional. After the service, I returned to college, this time at the University of Minnesota, and while studying to be a teacher, I read such Black authors as James Baldwin, and I observed a campus fomenting over a war in Vietnam and campaigning for passage of civil rights legislation. This was a time of real awakening for me. In 1978, I and my family had the opportunity to go to work in Tanzania, Africa for Operation Bootstrap Africa. Although we were there for only a year, this was an experience we will never forget. We made friends with many missionaries who were there to work as agriculturists, foresters, nurses, doctors, church administrators, teachers, and pastors. We noticed, however, that even in a place like Tanzania, where white people were less than 1% of the population, they still had white privilege, left over from the days of colonial rule on the African continent. And we often felt that we were treated in a special way because of our white skin. We learned that one cannot escape the color of one's skin, even if the perceptions that come with that color are truly incorrect. After several moves, my family and I settled in Prescott, Wisconsin, where we've been active at Joy Lutheran Church. I served many positions in women's ministries, and in 2009, through the women of the ELCA, I was selected to attend a training session to become a racial justice advocate in our synod. This was an intense training, and I learned how much more I had to learn about racial justice. Even though I've worked in this area for the past 10 years, I'm still learning and will continue to learn about this subject for the rest of my life. This has not been an easy journey for me. It's hard work to learn that you live in a society that has made so many mistakes, that you yourself have lived in a sort of bubble or in oblivion about people who don't look like yourself or have not had the same experiences that you've had just because of the color of their skin. My journey has been enhanced throughout the past decades by reading, talking to people of a different color and experiences than I, joining study groups with others who have a passion for learning more about what we don't know, and speaking to others who will listen, contemplate, and become fellow travelers on this journey to justice. This is why I speak to you in this video, to encourage you to join the journey if you have not yet done so. The first step you can take is to support the resolution that the Racial Justice Action Group is bringing forward for your consideration and a vote at our next Synod Assembly, hopefully next April.